I recorded what is now going to be a part A of my sewing room, and I gave you guys a tour of what that looked like. And I have some updates that I want to share. One of the primary comments that I got on my video, you guys left really awesome and sweet and kind comments, was that the room looked very airy, it looked very clean and organized, and I want to share with you my overriding principle that helps me achieve that look. And I can't wait to share with you because I think it's really key, and I think it's actually fairly straightforward. Not always easy, but it's really straightforward. I'm gonna share that with you at the end, and I think that you guys will have a really good idea of how that works once I kind of give you a little bit of a refresh. Let's go ahead and get started, and I will show you what's new. Aesthetically, everything's mostly the same. If you remember, when I went into this closet here, I kept a dresser and a handful of other things. So we can look in here today. And you guys can see that I've really cleared out a lot of what was in here. So I actually use this as an additional filming space. I've got a vintage sewing table, and on top I have my Juki sewing machine. I don't have a project in progress on this machine right now. I have my 2 mannequins, and up top I still have a collection of sewing books. If I just take a bit of a step back, the next kind of logical question is, well, where did the dresser go? Where did your fabrics go? My fabrics are now in this closet. This used to be my mishmash personal plus kind of like hardwares closet. And now I have my sewing room dresser that has all of my fabrics inside. Patterns right now are still hanging from the hangers that I showed you previously, and I have a handful more that are printed and rolled. I'm really leaning into simply ordering plotter prints for my patterns. It does add an added expense. I try to do it all at one time, but I basically keep all of my rolled up patterns here. Fabrics, nothing has changed about this since the last video. It's all the same stuff. If anything, I just have things kind of moved around a little bit as I've been sewing projects. This is tools. Here is my vintage Kenmore. This basket for my daughter is still here. And then I just have some makes. I ultimately feel like this is a big improvement from the last kind of closet views. So I made that switch. My sewing cart and my primary sewing machine table, all of that is still the same. And my tools cart. I did make an update to the tools cart. I used to store my serger threads down here, and I thought about that for a little while, and I realized that I don't swap them out as often as I think. I made space to store serger threads in a drawer out of the light. I've maintained this setup with the vintage table and the serger on top. It just works really well. I keep it fairly simple and plain over here. Since the guest bed is right here, this table actually works really well for people to put down coffee or a drink or a cup or something. If I'm working and my kids are hanging out down here, if they're home from school, it's really easy to kind of move this situation. One of my organization or sewing room design strategies is to keep things portable, keep things movable. I did have a really nice comment, or a couple of really great comments, but one was on the view outside, and I agree, it's amazing. And I am super fortunate that I get to see this, A, as part of my sewing work, but also as part of my work day. So I don't take that for granted. One thing that I didn't want to do when I set up my sewing room, when I created this primary station, is I knew that I wanted to leave my sewing machine out. I didn't want to pack it away. I didn't want to cover it because it would encourage me to sew more often. I wanted to keep it out of the sun, essentially. So this felt like a really nice tucked away place to put my machine. And you'll also notice that I purposely put the threads that I use most often facing away from this natural light. Serger threads, I'm a little bit less concerned about. The back of the serger is exposed to the sun. My incentive around that is to make sure that I am keeping sewing, that if I keep those spools spinning around, that it won't sit in the sun for very long at all. So I do have something new that is different, something that I received for Christmas. So the iron that I used to use was really pretty and it was a beautiful color and it had flowers on the side, but it leaked. That eventually just started to smell, and I think something inside just kind of melted away. I sent it to an authorized warranty service center and they sent me a replacement iron. In the meantime, I decided that I was ready to request a gift for Christmas. So this is the Rowenta Perfect Steam Pro. It has a water tank and it is incredible. I could tell you that I've made at least 1.5 garments without having to refill this tank. It does get super steamy, so there's two options. There's a max and there's an eco. I keep it on eco 100% of the time. If anyone's on the fence about it and has a gift opportunity where someone's wondering what they can maybe pitch in on and help you get to flesh out your sewing studio or sewing room, I highly recommend this iron. I love it. And then if anyone's curious, I did put, it's a non-stick heat-proof pad, but it's also grippy. But since I have it under here, I want something to make sure that it doesn't slide off of the iron stand. In theory, I could put it down underneath. This ironing board has a shelf, but as you can see, I'm already using that shelf. Okay, so we are gonna go out into another room, which is where I have my cutting table. There might be a little bit of an echo, so just bear with me. I do have a mic on. I hope it's working. Okay, so a few different equipment changes in this part of my sewing space. The first one that I think might be obvious is the addition of this projector. There were a few of you who had a really great recommendation to check out a couple videos and sewists online who talk about projector sewing. And in that time, since then, I've looked it up, I've done some research, and I purchased this on eBay. Just in case anyone's curious, there's someone in the Projectors for Sewing Facebook group who deals in used projectors, typically coming out of an education or a school environment, because these apparently are just really common in schools. I purchased this model because I don't want to mount anything on the ceiling or on the wall, because again, I want portability. I want to be able to move my equipment around as and when my needs change. And I've purchased again, with the support of the group, the Facebook group, I found this TV stand. And I will just point out that this kind of array of cables, don't be discouraged. It's actually me just storing it there for a while. There's a little bit of a shelf on this stand, and that's where I plan to put my laptop when I am projecting from here onto this table. So that leads me to the update here, which is I've changed my cutting mat. I used to have a white, kind of an opaque white cutting mat that I purchased from Joann's, and it was rolled. So when they sell it in the store, it's in a roll, and I was never quite able to flatten it. But when you're projecting, you need an absolutely flat surface. So I took the plunge. Joann had a particular sale. It was either 40% off or 50% off regular price items. And that's when I took the plunge to buy this cutting mat. I can honestly tell you that if it was not on sale, and if I didn't want to make an investment into projector sewing, investment in time, investment in money, investment in learning, then I wouldn't have updated my mat. So I want to just kind of caveat that This isn't the best mat by any means. It's just that there were two criteria that I needed to fulfill in order to get projector sewing right. And one of those was an absolutely flat mat. And the other thing was that it was not white because it's hard to see line. Anyway, we could talk about that in another video someday. I also made the change since I had a bigger cutting mat now. If anyone's curious, I talk about this table setup in my other video, but since I have this new mat, I wanted a clearer surface. I didn't want cutting accessories or that sort of thing on the table. So I found another IKEA cart. This task light that you see up here, it's really great when the room is dark, but it's actually for recording videos. So that's kind of the main reason that I have that up there. And then I had also talked to you guys about my printing, but then I also just wanted to step out a little bit because I'm gonna do another video in the future. This is the little corner that I use to record my try-ons or shoot my thumbnails for the garments that I make. So just to give you guys a little bit of context of the room, printer, cutting table, and then off to the right, I'm not swinging off to the right now because there's a little bit of a home workout station there, but that's a topic for another time. As promised, one of the main comments that I got in the last time that I made this sewing room tour video was about the airiness, how organized it was, how much there was a lack of clutter and a lack of items. And I appreciate all those comments because that's exactly what I try to go for. I work from home, and so I work and sew in the same space. Both for me are very charged things, but I also don't want the energy from one or the other to give it the wrong energy. I don't want it to be too relaxing in here because I've got to work, but I also don't want it to be too work-oriented, too functional. Otherwise, I wouldn't feel very inspired. My number one tip for how I achieve this overall look in the room, what helps me achieve it, maybe not how, but what helps me achieve it, is that I don't put anything on the floor. Furniture goes on the floor. My projects, my possessions, my items, new things that I acquire, they're not gonna wind up on the floor. And that is my general rule. It does not go on the floor. If I get anything new, I put it where it will likely go, but it doesn't go on the floor. If I get new packages, if I get boxes, if I have a handbag or something I'm running downstairs, I'll put that on the floor, but it's not gonna live on the floor. There is nothing in here besides furniture whose permanent place is the floor. All right, so if you remember, I showed you this room. There's very little on the floor. Those guys live on the floor. I mean, you're not gonna put a mannequin on top of a piece of furniture, but we've got furniture and then stuff on top of the furniture. Similarly with this, we've got a table. I have a basket under there with video recording equipment, but I don't have anything on the floor. Furniture goes on the floor, so here's this bed. This cart I'm using as furniture. It's designed to sit there on the floor. Same thing with the iron and the ironing board. These guys up off the floor, I have them on the shelf. Under my desk, I do have stuff on the floor. I have a space heater, and then my dog's bed. So she likes to lay down in front of the space heater. And then same thing over here. So at the sewing table, cart, again, sits on the floor. I don't have anything underneath. The only thing that I do have on the floor off to the side in the wall is an extra cutting mat. And I showed you guys that in my last video. The way that I plug in my devices here, there's double-sided sticky tape underneath that power plug. The goal is to keep it up off the floor. In this closet, in what probably holds the most stuff, my papers and my tubes are on the floor. They're not furniture, and that's not gonna be a permanent situation. So that's kind of what I was hinting at earlier. Those will be moved. I haven't found a solution for it yet. It may be a basket, with the basket sitting on the floor as its function. So I guess the reason that I bring that up is not to say that anything on the floor is a bad idea. It's not. I mean, it makes sense, right? It's a surface and it's the perfect place to put things. But in terms of keeping a room feeling airy, feeling light, feeling organized, feeling relaxing, not allowing myself to store things on the floor has been really key. And it's the same out here as well. So the basket is probably going to be the solution for my roll-up patterns that are in that closet. The cart, which is designed to stay on the floor. I actually have the anti-fatigue mat there because it helps me be a couple inches taller to make this worthwhile. This table is a little bit tall for me. And then the rolling cart is on the floor, and it's supposed to be on the floor. So that strategy works in a couple of different ways. By keeping things off the floor, it gives the view an impression that things are really clear, that it's very clean. It just looks clean. Whether it is or it isn't, doesn't matter. I think that we can all store things on our sparkling, clean floors. It still wouldn't necessarily feel that way. The second thing is it does help me maintain a level of cleanliness. This actually brings me to another question that I wanted to ask you guys, which is how you manage dust or dust bunnies. I find, and have so far found, that if I keep the floors cleared, it makes it easier for me to see and recognize when dust bunnies kind of start swirling around. I'm curious if you guys use air filters. Does anyone use an air filter in their studio space to help with, dust? Say you have asthma, I don't know. I just know that the work that we do as sewists attracts and generates a lot of dust in the air. And I've always debated bringing an air filter down here, but I don't know if it's even gonna help, and it would probably sit on the floor. I think that's the main thing that I would share about how I keep this room manageable. It's multi-purpose. It's a guest room, or it's a child hangout space. It is my sewing space. It is a place where I actually come to relax. And then it is my work from home space. So it's multi-purpose, and I try to keep the floors clear. And you'll hear me saying, keep the floors clear. I'm not saying clean. It's not about cleanliness, although that's important. It's about keeping it clear. And that is what leads to the next kind of feeling that you might have about the space that you're in. Is it clear? Is it uncluttered? Is there anything that I look at and it feels like this is a burden? This is slowing me down. This is distracting. That's a topic for another video. I'm planning that we will get there, but we will talk about that soon. I am going to be focusing the next several weeks on sewing a bunch, recording a bunch, editing a little bit less bunchy. So you may not hear from me for a little bit. I'm still here. I promise I'm still here. I want to sew some more pants. I had a request for a sew along on a particular pair of pants that I'm personally challenged by because I hear about the pattern brand Vicky Sews, and I hear what people say, but I haven't done a Vicky Sews. So I'm looking forward to doing that. I also have a longer term project in mind that I will likely post a video for in the fall, but it means that I need to start working on it now. Got plans, I'm gonna be sewing, I'm gonna be working, and I will also be reading your comments, so keep them coming. I don't know when you're gonna be watching this video, I don't know how far in the future you are, but I do my best to read all the comments. I appreciate every like, I appreciate every subscribe, really making a big push to grow my channel, so I appreciate all of you guys. I look forward to seeing you all very, very, very soon.